this guy and this girl who on the street, and I think it was like a closed circuit TV camera. I don't even think it was like a cell phone cam. And the guy meets some other dude on the street and just like floors the guy, puts him to sleep. And the girl's like there and she's asleep. She doesn't call an ambulance. She doesn't help him up. The guy is like out cold. The other dude, the guy who was the assailant, he takes off, right? And she's there and she just walks away, walks off, right? And you probably are going to, you probably remember when I don't think I showed the video. I have to be careful again in showing stuff like that. But like the one video, it's famous now. I think it was 2018 or 2019 where the guy was in the club in the foyer. And yes, you sent it to me. I do have it. I'm just not going to put it on the show. But the guy's in the foyer or the lobby area of this club, and these couple are fighting. The guy turns into a white knight, gets up off the seat, the waiting room seat, tries to split him up, and the boyfriend guns him down right there, cold blood, dead. And you know what? Girl walks out the club with him, goes right with him. So that's the reality of the situation, right? Women will escalate. And Torsia will probably back me up on this because I know, it's anger management. Thank you for looking that up, by the way, my beautiful magician's assistant. She'll back me up on this. She's a bartender, right? If you work in wine and spirits for any length of time, you're going to see this live and in person. And I knew this long before, social media started like making it unignorable, but you can see this every single day. So the more dangerous message here is not don't learn Krav Maga, which I don't think is what he's saying. It's just like, don't be overly dependent on that. Don't think that is your ticket out of a hostile, violent situation. Because as any woman, hell, as any guy will tell you, the dude who's going to win the fight is the guy who's crazy enough to win it. The guy who wants to beat your ass because he's got nothing left to lose. That's the guy who's insane. The guy who's high on, well, God knows what. The guy who's, 3 beers in. That guy likes to fight guy, right? That guy. When people drink, and I'm sure anybody who works in wine and spirits knows this, there's like different kinds of drunks, right? There's the guy who's the happy drunk. There's the guy who's the mouthy drunk, who's like, verbal diarrhea kind of thing. And then there's likes to fight guy. There's belligerent drunk. When you run into belligerent drunk, ladies, I don't care what super sport you better have a gun, basically. You better have some sort of firearm on you at that time. Because that's probably the only way you're going to end that engagement, especially if that guy's like hammered and doesn't know any different. It's body weight. It's physical aggression. How do I know that? Well, I'm about to show you, because as if you didn't need any more proof than just the sporting proof, reality meets ideology. Okay, well, here we go. Let's for the more rational minded of you, for the more literal minded of you, let's look at some stats, some empirical data. What the hell is this, Rollo? Well, let me tell you. Let me give you a bit of information. Now, it's kind of small. Every time I do an overlay, it gets really small. So I'm going to read this to you myself. Okay. What was this? This is from Human and Nature. It was a 2012 study. Okay, table 1, sex differences that suggest male design for combat in humans. Okay, men were selected for combat. Understand? Here we go. This is why male humans have greater upper body strength. Okay, and then it lists the references and where they're getting the data from here. Okay, by the way, the oldest data set on this list is 1953. We have known this for a very long time. What's the other one? 1995, 1970, 1975. This is not novel information, okay? Greater upper body strength, taller bodies, heavier bodies, higher basal metabolic rates, faster reaction times. Keep that in mind. Put a footnote in that. We're going to come back to faster reaction times later in this show. Thicker bones in the jaw so you can take one to the chin. Faster mental rotation of spatial visualization. More accurate throwing. In fact, oddly enough, human babies that are male know how to throw an object innately better than a female child does, because that's what their brains are wired for. Target acquisition and target firing, throw this rock at that critter. Okay. And now let me just stop right there really quickly, because I know what's going to happen, because people are going to say, well, Rolo, don't you think that the girls' little league baseball, that girls can be really great pitchers? Yes, they can, if they're taught, if they have a natural affinity for it, but they do not have the same proclivity, the innate, natural, evolved proclivity for throwing an object with force, putting your shoulder into it. Jen and I just talked about it a minute ago, right? How to throw a punch by putting your shoulder into it. That's why we say, oh, you throw like a girl, right? You throw with your elbow instead of like throwing over, right? Human male babies do this innately. That's a natural innate proclivity in human males. That's an evolved difference, a sexual gendered difference between boys and girls. So keep that in head. So we had let me put this back up again. We had faster reaction times, thicker bones in the jaw, faster mental rotation of spatial visualization. By the way, that goes back again to throwing an object accurately, more accurate throwing, more accurate blocking of thrown objects. More interest in the practice of combat skills, stronger bones, greater bone density, specifically in the arms, easier heat dissipation, more hemoglobin in the blood, higher muscle to fat ratio, larger hearts, higher systolic blood pressure, broader shoulders enabling efficient weapon use, larger sweat capacity, larger circulating blood volume, greater resistance to dehydration, tolerance for risk and dangerous activities. Yet again, put a thumbnail, put your bookmark right in that one too, because we'll come back to that. Faster sensory frame shifting. Keep that in mind too. Thicker skin. And I don't mean that figuratively, I mean that literally. Larger lung capacity and greater use of physical and homicidal aggression. The most important part of that list at the very end there. Keep that in mind, because that's where we're going with this today. This is all of these well-researched since 1953 all the way up to 2012. Now, you can learn Krav Maga. I'm not saying you shouldn't. You can learn, I don't know. I hate to talk about martial arts because whenever anybody says, well, what martial arts do you practice? And it's Kali, right? But like when people ask me, well, I never get into, it's like, can Superman beat up Tarzan? It's like, I don't come at me and say, well, if you learned Aikido, then a girl could, doesn't matter in this, that's not the point of this whole screed here. Okay. The fact is that we're teaching girls this false sense of security. You need to be careful. You need a man to defend you. That's half the time when you see these videos where the girl's slapping the guy and the guy pushes them off, 10 guys pile in. That's the reliance. They're relying on the fact that there's going to be a guy there who's going to pick up the slack for them. Or you see a girl who gets like just cold cocked on the New York subway, just like she was saying, right? You see that girl who just takes one, right? And you're like, what's the first thing in your mind? What's the first thing any woman will say when she sees violence towards a woman and nothing happens? What's the first thing? Oh, how come she doesn't know Krav Maga? I guess she didn't train hard enough. I guess she doesn't know what she's doing. No, the first thing we say is, where are the guys? Where's the dude? How come these men don't know that it's their chivalrous, masculine, honor-bound duty to protect their woman? Why isn't that, why is that the go-to when we see something like that? I remember seeing, I forget what, I think it was probably like 2017. Somebody showed me this video and it might've been Canada. I don't know, but there was like a moose or an elk or something like that in a park somewhere. And it was attacking this young lady who was in the park, and there's guys there and they just watch this shit happen. And they're just going down live in real time. And of course, the first thing out of anybody's mouth is, how come those guys aren't going to help that lady from being attacked by an elk or a moose or a caribou or whatever the hell it was? That was the point. That was the whole, like, people just lose their minds and they get indignant because guys didn't want to put themselves between the girl and like sharp antlers or whatever it was, a ferocious animal. And that's the operative that we're going to get into in the next half of this show today. Okay. Ladies, there's a reason why you look for dominant men. There's a reason why you look for a guy who's taller than you, broader than you, has the chiseled jawline, like we were saying, like you take it to the chin. There's a reason. Those are evolutionary reasons why you are dependent on a man. You are dependent on them for your security. You could say, well, I got a gun. Great, you got a gun. It doesn't erase 100,000, 200,000 years of evolution that makes you predisposed to being attracted to a guy who's taller than you, has a V-taper, has a capacity for violence, is stronger, smarter, faster. You want to go back over the list of combat attributes for human males? Those also happen to translate almost perfectly, dovetail perfectly with what women find attractive in a guy. It's not freaking rocket science. Stop throwing out these messages that say, oh, don't worry about it. You just be independent. You're a strong, independent woman. Independent of what? Independent of men, of course. No, you are very, almost overly dependent on men, because you would not have the attitude you have right now were you not dependent on a man showing you how to throw a punch, showing you how to use a gun, showing you how to, do Krav Maga or whatever it is that you're doing. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that you want to challenge the message. All right, at the end of the video, she's like, well, ladies, don't let any guy tell you this. No, ladies, absolutely let a guy tell you that, because that could be the difference between life and death. Absolutely do that. See, that's the fucking problem. You're unteachable. You're so full of yourself and so full of hubris and so full of your own ego that you won't take that kind of advice from a guy. Like, look, here's the deal. Learn it, but don't think that it's going to save you in those situations. Don't mouth off. Don't get yourself into a position where you have a false sense of security to the point where you're hubristically, crowing at the top of the top of the pile there, woman power, when all it takes is a guy who's 200 pounds to push you off that top. We see it. You see it every single day. And I think that's the thing that is really throwing a lot of people off about the red pill right now. Is when guys like that, when I say this in no uncertain terms, and I emphasize this, say, oh, he's emotional. Yeah, I am about this, because I don't want my daughter to be like, I would much rather have my daughter's boyfriend or husband or whoever it is step up and step into that situation and diffuse it instead of initiating it, instead of escalating it. Because women will do that, especially if they're with the guy. I think I was, what was I talking about? I have an essay. It's not in any book, but it's called Let's You and Him Fight. And by the way, that's a dynamic, an intersexual dynamic that I've talked about in the past. And what women will do is they've got a big ass boyfriend, and so they feel more confident to pop off to their girlfriends or to pop off to the wait staff or to pop off to whoever at the club kind of thing, knowing that their boyfriend, it's like a test for their boyfriend's like masculinity to come in and save her drunk ass from getting beat down. Because in the back of her head, as you can be as like uninhibited with alcohol as you want to, still in the root level, that's how binary this is. On the root level, on the lizard brain level, she still goes, well, I've got a big bad boyfriend. Let's see if you can really fight. Hey, my boyfriend can beat you up. Oh yeah? Okay, bring him out here. Right? That challenge, right? You didn't do, you're the boyfriend, right? You have no idea what the hell just happened. But now you got to go kick this guy's ass because of your wife or your girlfriend or whoever escalated or initiated an inherently unsafe situation. Yes, you're still dependent. Yes, you go get self-defense. Great, fine, good. Please do. It's better than not. But do not believe this nonsense about a 120-pound little girl knocking out a 250-pound dude with one punch or one kick. Right? And then he's out cold for as long as it takes to do whatever the hell that they're doing in the plot of the movie, right? Get the fuck out of here. That's fantasy. That's what your ego is invested in. Your ego ought to be invested in the fact that there's guys that will just mow right over you. They'll just plow over you, because all it takes is just a little bit of speed and a momentum and a lot of body weight, and you're done. So that's the real inherently unsafe message in all of this. Don't go to those extremes. Don't, or at the very least, be measured and understand that reality in no way conforms to your fantasy of what you think ought to be. They're just average regular guys. Yeah. Average guys, the 80%. Yeah. They're overweight. Got more body weight than you. If they're moved to violence, if they're emotional, if they're angry, if they are like, unhinged, for lack of a better term, if they're losing their minds, if they're on whatever drug, if suddenly they stop sedating themselves and, you know, they get pissed off for whatever reason, even slightly mentally imbalanced, yeah, I don't care how untrained they are. I don't care how fat they are. They're going to push right over you. So you need to be realistic. Stop thinking in terms of like, oh, like the whole thing about that video is, and this is like the defense side of things. The whole thing about that video is that it's trying to remove the idea that a woman might need a guy to defend her, because women are the vulnerable sex. They always have been and they always will be. And thanks for that, Sam. I see thank you for Why We Fight. I'm sorry, that's the name of the essay, but it's you know, let's you and him fight is the dynamic.